So now let's continue with the symptomatology. The other important symptom is earache. So if a patient presents to you with earache, you have to ask again about onset, duration, laterality, character, severity, aggravating and relieving factors, history of instrumentation in ear, referred otalgia, associated URTI or ear discharge, and any past history of earache. So if a patient presents to you with earache, you have to first of all find out how did it start and since how long is the patient experiencing pain. So if the earache is acute, it may be a cause of trauma, otitis externa, acute otitis media, or mastocytitis, whereas insidious or chronic pain may occur in otitis media with effusion. If a patient with chronic otitis media, mucosal or tubotympanic type of disease, and if the patient starts experiencing pain, then you have to think of complications, because COM or CSOM tubotympanic is a painless condition. There is discharge but there is no pain. And you have to ask about the laterality of earache, which side is involved, whether it is unilateral or bilateral disease. Character of pain, whether it is dull aching, stabbing, cutting or pricking type. And ask the patient about severity of pain, whether it is mild, patient can do normal activity, moderate, when normal activity can be continued with medication or rest, or severe, which is disturbing the daily activity or may need bed rest. Otitis externa, herpes zoster and pre-suppurative acute otitis media is very painful. Chronic otitis media is a painless condition. So ask the patient about aggravating and relieving factors, whether jaw movement exacerbates pain. So this would confirm the disease is either located in the jaw joint or in the external auditory canal. Relieving factors such as use of pain medication or nasal decongestion may decrease pain due to eustachian tube dysfunction. Ask the patient about history of trauma to the ear. History of ear pricking and trauma to ear is important as the etiology for various ear conditions. History of trauma to pinna is important. There may be laceration, cellulitis, perichondritis, trauma to the external auditory canal, laceration, and otitis externa. Trauma to tympanic membrane may cause tympanic membrane perforation. The other thing you have to rule out is whether the earache is of referred character, that is referred otalgia. Referred otalgia may occur via C2 and C3 spinal nerves in case of cervical spondylosis, injury of cervical spine and carriage spine, via the fifth cranial nerve in cases of dental, oral cavity, temporomandibular joint or sphenopalatine neuralgia. In dental causes, there may be caries tooth, apical abscess, impacted molar, malocclusion. In oral cavity, there may be benign or malignant ulcerative lesions of oral cavity or tongue. Temporomandibular joint condition disorder like bruxism, osteoarthritis, recurrent dislocation, or ill-fitting denture. It may occur via ninth cranial nerve in diseases of oropharynx, base of tongue, or elongated styloid process. Oropharyngeal condition involves acute tonsillitis, peritonsillar abscess, tonsillectomy, benign or malignant ulcers of soft palate, tonsil and its pillar, base of tongue, malignancy or tuberculosis. Via the 10th cranial nerve, conditions like malignancy or ulcerative lesions of vallicula, epiglottis, larynx or laryngopharynx and esophagus may mimic or may present as otalgia. These are the conditions of referred otalgia. You have to ask whether the earache is associated with ear discharge, like in cases of acute otitis media, or associated with upper respiratory tract infection, like in cases of eustachian tube dysfunction. And don't forget to ask about past history. Similar history in past where the patient had experienced earache. So these are the things you would ask if a patient presents to you with earache. So moving forward, the next symptomatology that the patient may present to you is tinnitus. So if a patient presents to you with tinnitus, you have to find out the types of tinnitus. You have to ask about the onset, duration, laterality, character, severity, aggravating and relieving factors, and associated features. So there are two types of tinnitus. One is subjective and the other is objective. Subjective meaning it is perceived by patient only, like in cases of wax, otitis media with effusion, acute otitis media, noise-induced hearing loss, metabolic disorders, neurological conditions, or cardiovascular disease or anxiety. Whereas in objective type of tinnitus, it is heard by others as well, particularly the examiner. Example, in cases of vascular AV shunts, arterial bruit, jugular venous hum, patulous eustachian tube, palatal myoclonus, stapedial or tensor tympani myoclonus. So if a patient complains about tinnitus, you have to ask the onset and duration of tinnitus. Sudden onset in cases of loud noise exposure, trauma, sudden sensorineural hearing loss, whereas insidious in cases of presbyacusis or chronic noise exposure. You have to ask about the laterality of tinnitus, whether it is unilateral in cases of impacted wax or traumatic injury, or bilateral as in cases of presbyacusis and chronic noise exposure. Again, find out the character of tinnitus, whether it is ringing, hissing, buzzing, roaring, clicking, or rough sounds. These are the common sounds that the patient tries to explain to you when they are talking about their tinnitus. So the character of tinnitus may be constant, intermittent, or pulsatile. Pulsatile in vascular etiology, whereas intermittent in Meniere's disease. So the severity may be mild, small sound not perceived all the time, and severe with disturbed sleep and is present all the time. So the aggravating and relieving factors for tinnitus, like aggravating factors could be neck movement or orificial movement if there is somatosensory cause, jaw movement in cases of TMJ disorder, stress or loud noise exposure. Ask the patient whether there is associated factors like ear discharge, conductive hearing loss, where it could be because of wax, chronic otitis media, middle ear diseases, sensorineural hearing loss, in cases of presbyacusis, vestibular schwannoma, medication history, if there is history of ototoxic drugs. So this is all when asking a patient about history of tinnitus. So the next symptomatology we are going to discuss is dizziness or vertigo. This is a very important topic, and we have to rule out whether the vertigo is because of ENT condition, peripheral type, or it is central type. So we have to ask and elaborate the history from patient and try to rule out all these conditions, whether it is a life-threatening condition or a common symptom. So in case of dizziness or vertigo, you will have to ask about onset, duration, whether it is constant or intermittent, what are the triggering factors, what is the severity, associated symptoms, ask about any otologic history, social or medical history. So character of vertigo, it is mostly spinning or rotatory type, or sometimes positional spinning sensation may be offered by the patient. Onset of vertigo, ask the patient to describe the first episode and the last attack, because these are the episodes that the patient is likely to remember in detail. Ask the patient if vertigo is always there. If it is a constant condition, then it may be central cause, whereas intermittent in case of peripheral cause. So according to the duration or time of episode of vertigo, we can have a provisional or differential diagnosis of the disease. So if the vertigo is for seconds, like 1 to 5 seconds, then it may be because of BPPV, superior semicircular canal dehiscence, vestibular paroxysma. Seconds to minute, it may be because of BPPV, cardiovascular condition or panic disorder. Minute to hours, it may occur because of Meniere's disease, migraine associated vertigo and transient ischemic attack. Hours to days, it may be because of Meniere's, migraine associated vertigo, stroke and CNS lesion, vestibular neuronitis and labyrinthitis. If the vertigo persists for days to weeks, it may be migraine associated vertigo, vestibular neuronitis, labyrinthitis, stroke or drug reactions. If it is chronic for months to years, then it may be because of stroke, superior semicircular canal dehiscence or fistula, ototoxicity or psychiatric condition. Triggering factors in vertigo. This may be change in position of head and body in case of BPPV, standing from bed or chair, postural hypotension or cardiovascular conditions, rapid head movement in BPPV, labyrinthitis, vestibular neuritis. Walking in dark room causing triggering of vertigo may occur in bilateral vestibulopathy. Light, sound, season or menstrual cycle may aggravate vertigo in migraine. Loud noise and pressure changes triggering vertigo can occur in lateral semicircular canal fistula or superior canal dehiscence. Stress can increase vertigo in migraine or psychiatric conditions. Sometimes seeing moving things can cause vertigo. This occurs in vestibular seizure. So the severity of vertigo should be asked. So ask the patient about severity of vertigo and how does it hamper in daily activity. And also ask the patient how has the severity changed over time. So in case of vertigo, you have to ask about associated symptoms. In associated symptoms, ask about oral fullness, which occurs in Meniere's or perilimb fistula, earache, which can occur in otitis media, labyrinthitis, migraine, facial weakness, which may be because of herpes zoster, vestibular schwannoma, headache, which may be because of migraine, vestibular schwannoma, hearing loss if there is Meniere's disease, perilimb fistula, herpes zoster, otosclerosis, or chronic otitis media. Photophobia and phonophobia in cases of migraine, tinnitus in Meniere's disease, labyrinthitis, vestibular schwannoma, diplopia and dysarthria because of central cause, nausea and vomiting in peripheral causes of vertigo. So you shouldn't forget to ask about autologic history in case of vertigo. Ask about tinnitus because there may be Meniere's disease, migraine, vestibular schwannoma, hyperacusis or phonophobia in migraine, fullness in ear in Meniere's disease, hearing loss in Meniere's and labyrinthitis, ear pain in case of migraine or TMJ disorder. The social and medical history of patients should be looked into when you are taking history of a vertigo patient. Recent upper respiratory tract infection and ear discharge can lead to vestibular neuronitis or labyrinthitis, which can cause vertigo. Head trauma leading to BPPV direct trauma to ear causing perilymph fistula, diabetes, hypertension and smoking causing stroke or cardiovascular disease, anxiety or depression causing psychogenic vertigo, use of ototoxic drugs causing bilateral vestibulopathy which leads to vertigo, history of migraine can lead to migrainous vertigo. So again, before going away, review the systems. History of ototoxic drugs is there or not, cardiac problems, vascular risk factors, endocrine problems, autoimmune cause or psychiatric condition. So with this, your history taking in vertigo is done. Now proceeding to another symptom, itching in the ear, mostly associated with other conditions. So if a patient presents to you with ear itching, you have to rule out wax, otomycosis, discharging ear conditions or dermatologic conditions like eczema, dermatitis. Ask about onset, duration, laterality, progressive or constant, severity of itching, aggravating and relieving factors, associated URTI or ear discharge, and past history of itching. With this, you have the idea whether the ear itching is a single condition or if it is associated with other ear diseases. The next symptom that the patient may present to you with is deformity of pinna or swelling around the ear. So let's take both of them together. So if patient comes with this history, then as previously, you have to ask about onset, duration, laterality, progressive or constant nature, aggravating relieving factors, history of instrumentation and ear and trauma, whether this condition is associated with pain, associated upper respiratory tract infection or ear discharge is there, and past history. So deformity of pinna, the differential diagnosis could be congenital, traumatic, inflammatory or tumors. Congenital, there may be anosia, microtia, macrotia, bat ear, lop ear, cryptosia, coloboma, lobule deformity, preauricular tag appendages, preauricular sinus. So all these conditions may be there. Traumatic, like in cauliflower ear, pinna laceration, avulsion, frostbite, keloid. Inflammatory in perichondritis, relapsing polychondritis, and tumors. Swelling in preauricular area, the differential diagnosis would be preauricular cyst, infected preauricular sinus, preauricular lymph nodes, parotid swelling or TMJ disorders. Swelling in the postauricular area, there could be mastoiditis, mastodapsis, postaural lymphadenitis. So now we move into the other symptomatology, which is deviation of angle of mouth or incomplete eye closure. So how could this be a ear symptom? Because this condition occurs with facial nerve palsy. So if a patient presents with deviation of mouth or incomplete eye closure, then you have to first of all rule out the type of facial nerve palsy. Then ask about onset, duration, laterality, severity, associated factors, and past history. In upper motor neuron type of facial palsy, it may be because of stroke, subdural hematoma, or brain tumors, whereas a lower motor neuron type of facial palsy, in which there is facial palsy involving one half of the face, which is on the same side of the facial nerve injury. Whereas in upper motor neuron type of facial palsy, the palsy is on the opposite side of the site of injury in the facial nerve. Okay. And in upper motor neuron type, upper half of face is spared, whereas only the lower half of face is involved or there is palsy. So in lower motor neuron type, the cause may be acute otitis media, chronic otitis media with complication, Bell's palsy, parotid tumor, viral infection, temporal bone fracture. So asking about onset and duration. So if it is acute onset, it may be Bell's palsy, varicella zoster, traumatic temporal bone fracture, insidious in cases of meningioma, vestibular schwannoma, Sium squamous disease with complication, parotid malignancy. Ask the patient about the laterality, which side is involved. Unilateral in case of Bell's palsy, herpes zoster, Sium squamous. Bilateral in case of Guillain-Barré syndrome, sarcoidosis, sickle cell disease, acute leukemia, bulbar palsy, and leprosy. So severity of facial palsy is graded with House-Brackmann grading system. Grade 1, it is normal. Grade 2, mild dysfunction, slight weakness or normal symmetry at rest. Grade 3, there is moderate dysfunction, obvious but not disfiguring weakness with synkinesis, normal symmetry at rest. There is complete eye closure with maximal effort. Good forehead movement. In grade 4, there is moderately severe dysfunction. There is incomplete eye closure even with maximal effort. Moderate forehead movement is there. Grade 5, there is severe dysfunction, barely perceptible motion. Grade 6, there is total paralysis and no movement. This is House-Brackmann grading system. Associated factors that can be involved are history of ear discharge, history of trauma to head, history of endocrine disease like diabetes and hypothyroidism. You have to ask about past history. If there is similar episode in the past, recurrent facial palsy occurs in Michelson syndrome, Bell's palsy in 3 to 10% cases, diabetes, sarcoidosis, and tumors. This is about history taking in ear disease. If a patient presents to you with ear symptoms, these are the common symptoms that they present with, and this is how you take history from the patient. So next time we will be discussing about how to examine patient with ear disease. Thank you.